As dusk settled over Tokyo, the dim light of the hospital room cast long shadows that seemed to echo the gloom in Takumi Nakamura's heart. Lying frail on his deathbed, the beeping monitors punctuated the silence with their relentless rhythm, underscoring the little time he had left. He was only in his late 40s, yet his face was lined with fatigue, his eyes reflecting a soul wearied by too many battles, both personal and professional. "Why, Kenji? Why did you do it?" Takumi's voice was barely a whisper as he addressed his once-a-trusted business partner. The room was empty, save for the faint murmur of the city outside and the occasional shuffle of nurses in the corridor. He wasn't expecting an answer. Kenji had not visited since the betrayal became public. Takumi's firm, once thriving and respected, was now embroiled in scandals of embezzlement and deceit, all traced back to Kenji's actions. As he lay there, memories of better days played before his eyes, launching their startup, the early struggles, the triumphant breakthroughs, and the eventual rise to prominence. Now it was all tainted, the success hollowed out by treachery. A soft knock at the door broke his reverie. "Takumi, may I come in?" The voice was familiar and comforting. It was Hiroshi, his best friend since university days, the one person who remained steadfast through his declining health and the fallout of his financial empire. Hiroshi walked in, a sad smile playing on his lips as he took a seat beside the bed. "Hiroshi, you came." Takumi's voice cracked, emotion welling up. "I didn't think I'd see anyone I could still trust before the end." "I wouldn't be anywhere else, my friend," Hiroshi replied, taking Takumi's hand gently in his. "How are you feeling today?" "Like the world has already forgotten me," Takumi sighed, turning his head to meet Hiroshi's gaze. "I built something great, or so I thought. But it's all crumbling down. And this illness, it's like my own body has betrayed me too." Hiroshi squeezed his hand, searching for words that could offer solace. "You were deceived, Takumi, but it wasn't your fault. You did build something great. Remember that. Kenji's greed can't undo the good years, the jobs you created, the innovations you spurred." Takumi let out a shuddering breath, the weight of unshed tears in his eyes. "I just lost. I wish I could go back, Hiroshi. Start over. Make things right. Trust the right people." "That's a wish many of us have," Hiroshi murmured, his voice a soft echo in the sterile room. "But you got something most don't, Takumi. Time to reflect, to reconcile even now. Maybe that's a start." As the conversation dwindled, the night deepened around them, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of Takumi's looming fate. Hiroshi stayed, a silent guardian against the encroaching darkness, while Takumi drifted into a restless sleep filled with dreams of past choices and what might have been a second chance that seemed as distant as the fading stars outside his hospital window. Morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room where Takumi Nakamura slowly awoke. As consciousness crept in, he felt an odd lightness in his body, a stark contrast to the heavy lethargy that had become his constant companion. Baffled, he sat up effortlessly, without the usual aches and the harsh rasp in his breath that had haunted his waking moments. He glanced around disoriented. This wasn't the sterile white-walled hospital room, but his old apartment, the one he'd lived in during his early 30s. The realization dawned slowly. The calendar on the wall marked September 2007. His mind rebelled against the notion. It was impossible. Stumbling to the bathroom, Takumi caught his reflection in the mirror. A younger version of himself stared back, free from the pallor of illness and the signs of premature aging that had marked his final days. He touched his face in disbelief, tracing the smooth skin and the healthy glow. "How can this be?" he murmured to his reflection. The apartment, his youthful appearance, was all as if the last 16 years had been wiped clean. The ringing of his old landline phone snapped him out of his reverie. He hesitated, then picked it up. "Hello? Takumi." "Hey, are you still up for the game tonight?" The voice was unmistakably Hiroshi's, younger and more carefree. "Hiro." Takumi paused, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, sure." "But Hiroshi, I need to talk to you about something strange." You sound serious. What's up? You're not going to cancel on me last minute, are you? Hiroshi chuckled on the other end, oblivious to the turmoil brewing in Takumi.
No, it's not that.
I can't explain over the phone. Can we meet up earlier? Takumi's mind raced, trying to piece together the reality of his situation.
Sure, I can swing by in an hour.
Everything okay, Takumi? Concern tinged Hiroshi's voice now, picking up on his friend's unusual tone. Takumi glanced around the room again, taking in the old posters on the walls, the tech gadgets that were cutting edge for 2007, but now decidedly outdated. Think so. I need to sort some things out.
All right, man.
Hang tight. I'll be there soon. Hiroshi's response was immediate and reassuring.
Hanging up, Takumi sank down onto the sofa, his mind whirling.
Everything was old, yet it was all new again.
The city sounds filtering through the open window were familiar, but carried a surreal quality like echoes from a past, long departed yet vividly present.
He felt an overwhelming surge of emotions, confusion, fear, but also an unexpected sprig of hope.
Maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to amend the errors of his past, to relive his life differently. As he waited for Hiroshi, Takumi mulled over the decisions that lay ahead, the investments he knew would succeed, the disasters he could potentially avert.
But more than anything, he pondered on the personal betrayals. Could he change those?
Or was this second chance merely a cruel trick of fate?
As the hour ticked by, his anticipation grew, not just for the opportunity to rewrite history, but for the sheer unadulterated joy of seeing his friend again, under circumstances.
When Hiroshi arrived at Takumi's apartment, the door swung open to reveal a slightly disheveled but unmistakably younger Takumi.
His face was etched with an urgency that Hiroshi had never seen before, even during their most critical university exams.
The room was filled with relics of a past era, magazines dated back years, an old CRT television flickering in the background, and a computer setup that belonged in a museum by 2003 standards.
Takumi, what's going on?
You look like you've seen a ghost, Hiroshi said as he stepped inside, a playful smirk fading into concern as he surveyed his friend's anxious demeanor. Hiroshi, Takumi began, then paused, struggling with how to convey the unbelievable. I think I've traveled back in time. I know it sounds crazy, but look at everything.
It's 2007, Hiroshi.
2007.
Hiroshi's brow furrowed in confusion. Then he let out a loud laugh, assuming his friend was pulling an elaborate prank.
Man, you really had me going there for a second. Time travel?
What have you been watching?
Too much anime, huh? It's not a joke, Takumi insisted, his voice tense.
He grabbed a newspaper from the table and thrust it at Hiroshi. Look at the date. Do you remember this happening?
Because I remember it from 16 years in the future, Hiroshi. Hiroshi's laughter faded as he took the newspaper, his eyes scanning the headline and date.
A slow realization dawned on him, but skepticism lingered.
Okay, that's 2007 for sure. What's so special about it? Say, I entertain your reincarnation idea. How? How would you even do that?
I don't know how.
I just know it happened. I went to sleep in 2023, sick and not expecting to wake up.
And now, here I am. The earnestness in Takumi's eyes was something Hiroshi couldn't dismiss. Hiroshi sat down, the newspaper still in his hands, his mind racing through the implications if what Takumi was saying was true. So you're telling me you've lived through the next 16 years?
You know what's going to happen. Yes, exactly. Takumi paced the room, his earlier anxiety now mixed with a fervent excitement.
Think about it, Hiroshi.
I know what stocks are going to rise, which technologies will take off, the disasters that will occur.
We could change things.
Sitting back, Hiroshi watched his friend, the laugh lines fading into a mask of contemplation. That's a lot to take in, Takumi. If you're right, this is huge.
But it's also terrifying.
What if things aren't supposed to be changed?
But what if they are? Takumi countered, stopping his pacing to look directly at Hiroshi.
What if this is a chance to fix things to prevent some of the bad stuff from happening?
Hiroshi leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his demeanor shifting from incredulity to intrigue. Okay, I'm listening.
Tell me something specific, something you couldn't know unless you were, from the future.
Takumi nodded, relieved by Hiroshi's willingness to listen, and began detailing the events he knew were on the horizon: the financial crisis, the rise of smartphones, even personal events like betrayals, and the business failures that had been unforeseen the first time around. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows into the apartment, the two friends sat deep in discussion, grappling with the moral and practical implications of the knowledge Takumi held.
Laughter had turned to serious debate. Skepticism was slowly being replaced by a shared excitement and a hint of fear that would soon fuel a journey neither of them had expected to embark upon.
In the mellow light of an early September morning, Takumi and Hiroshi sat across from each other in a quiet corner of a bustling Tokyo cafe, papers and laptops strewn about, a tangible air of anticipation between them. Apple is about to launch something big, Hiroshi. It's called the iPhone. It will change everything about how people communicate and use technology, Takumi explained, his eyes scanning the stock market listings on his laptop.
Hiroshi, still somewhat skeptical about leveraging future knowledge, leaned in, whispering, "And you're sure about this?" "It's a lot of money to put on one bet, Takumi. I've never been more certain of anything."
I was there, remember? In 2023, everyone looks back at this as the moment everything changed, Takumi replied with conviction.
He detailed the plan. They would liquidate their current investments and pool together every yen to buy as much Apple stock as possible before the iPhone's release. "You realize we're talking about nearly $50,000, Takumi? That's all our savings, plus the loan we talked about."
Hiroshi's hand trembled slightly as he sipped his coffee. "It's worth the risk," Takumi assured him.
"We buy now, and by January, when everyone realizes what a goldmine this is, we sell some at a profit. Then short sell before the crash I told you about in 2008. Then buy back in at the lower prices."
Pulling up a series of charts, Takumi pointed to the historical trends and forecasts.
"See here? Apple's growth trajectory spikes.
We get in now, sell high in January, then protect ourselves with short sales." Hiroshi exhaled, closing his laptop with a snap. "Okay, let's do it. It's not just about the money, Takumi. I believe in your experience."
"Let's make our first 50,000.
They set up their brokerage accounts, transferring funds, buying stocks, each click a step towards an uncertain yet thrilling future. As they confirmed their last transaction, Hiroshi looked at Takumi, a mix of exhilaration and fear in his eyes.
"Here's to the future, or should I say, the past," Hiroshi joked, raising his coffee cup in a toast.
Takumi smiled, clinking his cup against Hiroshi's. "To changing our stars, my friend." As the weeks rolled into months, their initial investment in Apple paid off spectacularly. Their portfolio's value soared as the iPhone gained fame and market share, confirming every prediction Takumi had made.
By January 2008, they were ready to make their next move.
Following the plan, they sold high, securing their first significant profit. Then, as the market began to show signs of strain under the looming financial crisis, they short-sold, betting on the market's fall. Watching the numbers fluctuate on his screen, Takumi felt a chill.
It was one thing to remember these events. It was another to live them, knowing what was coming.
But with Hiroshi by his side, each strategic move felt less like a gamble and more like a step towards redemption. Months had passed since Takumi and Hiroshi had ridden the wave of Apple's success, their confidence bolstered by their gains. As spring unfurled its colors over Tokyo, the pair found themselves in the sleek, glass-walled office they had rented with some of their profits, tangible sign of their new venture into the tech world.
"Hiroshi, have you seen this? Facebook is at an all-time low this April."
"It's exactly like I told you, it struggles early on, but look where it stands in 2023, Takumi pointed out, showing the stock chart on his large monitor.
The lines dipped and curved like a mountain range, signaling opportunity.
Sitting across from him, Hiroshi rubbed his chin thoughtfully. So you're saying we take 100,000 from our last profit and invest in Facebook now?
That's a lot, Takumi.
Even more than our initial bet with Apple. Takumi nodded, his eyes alight with the thrill of the gamble.
Exactly.
It's a perfect time. People are skeptical now, but Facebook becomes a cornerstone of social media. It grows exponentially.
We need to be part of that growth.
You really have a knack for this, don't you? Seeing the future in the present, Hiroshi said with a half smile, still amazed at their situation.
It's not knack. It's memory and a bit of luck that we can act on it, Takumi corrected with a grin. Besides, we're not just stopping at stocks. We're starting our own firm, remember? Venture Tech. A tech app venture firm where we can create the apps I know will be needed. Apps for everything: education, health, finance.
Hiroshi leaned back, letting out a slow breath. Okay, we invest in Facebook, and we funnel the rest into venture tech. We hire developers, we scope out needs, we build apps that people don't even know they need yet.
We're not just playing the market, Takumi. We're aiming to shape part of the tech future. Their conversation shifted to the specifics of their new venture.
They discussed potential hires, office expansions, and the kinds of projects they would tackle. The energy in the room was palpable, two friends, not just surviving, but thriving by altering their fates through foresight and daring.
Here's what I think. Takumi started laying out a blueprint of their tech app strategy on the table.
We focus on 3 areas to start with: mobile payments, online learning, and personalized health apps. These are sectors that explode in the next decade.
We get in now, we innovate, and we set the pace.
Hiroshi nodded, picking up a pen to jot down some notes.
Mobile payments, huh? That's really taking off in Asia already. We could design something streamlined, more user-friendly than what's out there.
And with our Facebook investment, we'll have the capital to make this happen.
We'll be at the forefront, Hiroshi, not just riding the wave, but creating it, Takumi added, his voice tinged with excitement.
They finalized their decisions, transferring funds to purchase Facebook stock and earmarking significant resources for the development of venture tech. With each step, they were stitching a new fabric of future technology and investment, guided by the incredible advantage of Takumi's knowledge. As they left the office that day, the setting sun cast long shadows over the bustling streets of Tokyo. They walked side by side, not just business partners but pioneers on a journey back through time, with the power to mold a new future.
It was a partnership cemented in the past, investing in the future, and ready to revolutionize the technology landscape.
As summer waned and the chill of autumn began to creep through Tokyo, Takumi and Hiroshi found themselves hunched over a cluttered desk, strewn with financial reports and multiple screens displaying stock trends.
The atmosphere was tense. They were about to make one of their most critical moves yet.
Lehman Brothers is going to collapse, Hiroshi. It's not just a minor setback. It's a full-blown disaster that triggers the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, Takumi explained, his voice low and urgent. Hiroshi, looking pensive, shuffled through the papers. And you're absolutely sure about this, Takumi? Short selling now. It's a huge risk.
If you're wrong, we lose everything we've built so far.
Takumi met his friend's gaze, his own eyes steady.
I'm sure.
I saw it happen.
I remember the panic, the global shockwaves. We have a chance to not only protect our assets, but to come out ahead if we play our cards right.
With a nod, Hiroshi leaned back, running a hand through his hair.
Okay then.
Let's plan this meticulously.
We need to decide which stocks are most vulnerable: financials and real estate, right? Right, Takumi affirmed, pulling up a list on his computer. Here are the banks and realty companies that take the hardest hits.
We'll start short selling these gradually, building up as we get closer to Lehman's announcement.
We don't want to trigger any alarms or get caught in a bad position ourselves.
The room was filled with the soft clicks of mouse buttons and the occasional scribble of notes as they mapped out their strategy. They decided to increase their short positions in stages, monitoring the market's pulse and adjusting their tactics daily.
Okay, I'm placing the first set of shorts now, Hiroshi said, his finger hovering over the confirm button on his trading platform.
Takumi watched intently, his stomach tight with anticipation. Go ahead.
As Hiroshi executed the trades, he couldn't help but feel the gravity of their actions.
We're betting against the market, against a lot of people's livelihoods.
It's sobering.
Takumi sighed, a look of resolve etched on his features.
It is. But remember, we're not causing this crisis.
We're just refusing to be its victims. And with the profits, we can help.
We can invest in recovery and businesses that will need support to bounce back.
Hiroshi nodded, comforted somewhat by that perspective.
We're protecting ourselves and preparing to help others. That's a good way to look at it.
Over the next few weeks, they watched as their strategy unfolded almost exactly as Takumi had predicted. When news of Lehman Brothers' bankruptcy hit the headlines, the financial world reeled, but Takumi and Hiroshi were prepared.
Their portfolio, insulated from the worst of the shocks, even began to show gains from their strategic positions.
Sitting in their office late one evening watching the chaos of the market downturn play out on the news, Hiroshi turned to Takumi.
It's exactly as you said it would be.
It's eerie seeing it unfold, knowing we could predict it. Takumi nodded, his expression somber.
Knowing isn't always a relief, but this time it saved us. Now we need to focus on the next phase, helping rebuild what's going to be broken.
Together they looked out at the skyline of Tokyo, a city unaware of how deeply it would be affected, but for which they now held new hope and responsibility.
Their actions had shielded them from disaster, but the real work, the work of recovery and aid, was just beginning. As the initial shockwaves of the Lehman Brothers collapse began to settle, and the world grappled with the spiraling financial crisis, Takumi and Hiroshi retreated into the calm of their strategy room, a stark contrast to the turmoil engulfing global markets. They knew that the current chaos would eventually give way to recovery and growth, and they planned to be ready.
With a large map of Tokyo spread out on the table and multiple digital screens, displaying global stock indices and real estate trends, they discussed their next moves. The office was quiet, except for the low hum of the city outside, a reminder of the everyday lives impacted by the economic downturn. Takumi, our short positions have given us a buffer, a significant one, pointing to the figures on the screen that show their financial standing.
We have the capital now to pick up some strong assets at a fraction of their cost before the crash.
Yes, and we need to be strategic about this, Takumi replied, scanning the map and touching points that represented key areas in Tokyo and other major cities around the world. These are the locations where real estate will bounce back the strongest.
We should start acquiring properties here as soon as prices bottom out. Hiroshi pulled up a list of potential stocks and sectors that were historically proven to recover well after economic downturns.
What about expanding our portfolio to include more technology and healthcare? These sectors are resilient, and with the aging population, healthcare in particular is going to see sustained growth.
Good thinking, Takumi nodded in agreement. Let's allocate 30% of our reserve to tech and healthcare stocks. The rest we can split between real estate and a few other diverse investments to spread out our risk. As they delved deeper into their planning, they used a whiteboard to outline their investment strategy.
They marked timelines and projected price levels for entering various markets, their calculations detailed and methodical.
This preparation was not just about profit. It was about setting a foundation for long-term stability. Let's also keep some liquidity, Takumi suggested, erasing a portion of the board and rewriting it more clearly.
We need to be agile, ready to move quickly if unexpected opportunities or needs arise. Hiroshi updated their digital tracking system, setting alerts for price drops and news that might indicate the best times to buy.
We're better prepared than most, he said, a hint of pride in his voice. Most investors are panicking right now, but we're planning.
As they finalized their preparations, the weight of their responsibility loomed large.
They were not just safeguarding their own future, but positioning themselves as key players in the economic recovery.
By investing wisely during this downturn, they hoped to not only rebuild their fortunes, but also contribute to the broader economic stability. Once this crisis starts to fade, the landscape will be very different, Takumi reflected, looking out over the city.
But we'll be ready to help shape it, to build something lasting from the turmoil.
Hiroshi nodded, his expression resolute.
Let's review everything once more. Make sure we haven't overlooked anything. We need to be thorough as our actions now could define our paths for years to come. Together, they went over their plans once again, fine-tuning details and preparing for the critical months ahead.
Their careful preparation during these uncertain times was a testament to their resilience and foresight, equipping them to navigate through and emerge stronger from the global financial crisis. Winter had wrapped Tokyo in its chilly embrace when Takumi and Hiroshi convened in their newly established conference room, a space they had designed to foster both strategy and serenity amidst the bustling city. It was here that Takumi unveiled his memory of a pivotal event yet to unfold: massive urban development project in Tokyo, a plan which would ignite a real estate boom in its vicinity.
Remember the downturn we've been navigating?
Takumi began laying out a map of Tokyo on the table.
Well, it sets the stage for a significant recovery, spearheaded by a government-led initiative. They're planning a massive development right here, he said, pointing to a section of the map that was currently undervalued in the real estate market. Hiroshi leaned over the map, tracing the area with his finger. This?
It's pretty quiet there now. You're saying this will become a hotbed for growth?
Exactly, Takumi nodded. It's not just going to be residential. We're talking about commercial properties, retail spaces, public facilities. It's a complete revitalization.
If we invest in properties and construction firms involved with this project now, while the market is still low, we could see our investments multiply several times over as the project takes off. They spent the next hours diving deep into the specifics. Takumi had meticulously gathered data on the construction firms likely to be awarded contracts for the project, along with real estate trends and forecasts that supported his predictions.
They analyzed each firm for financial stability and growth potential, selecting those with the strongest prospects. Hiroshi, always methodical, suggested they approach this strategically.
Let's start by securing stakes in a few of these construction firms. We'll also purchase several properties in the area.
As the project gains public attention and development begins, the value of these investments will skyrocket.
With a plan in place, they initiated contact with real estate agents and set up meetings with construction companies. Each step was calculated with Takumi's foresight guiding their moves. They discussed potential risks, delays in project approval, changes in government policy, economic shifts, set up contingency plans for each scenario.
Their conversations often stretched into the late hours, fueled by strong coffee and the shared thrill of shaping the future.
This could be our most significant play yet, Hiroshi said one evening, a sense of awe in his voice as he looked over the sprawl of their burgeoning empire on paper.
Yes, but it's more than just profit, Takumi responded, his tone thoughtful.
It's about participating in something that will benefit the city, bring in jobs, and improve living conditions.
It's investing with a purpose.
As the project was officially announced and public excitement began to build, Takumi and Hiroshi watched as their early investments started to appreciate.
The buzz generated by the development brought more investors to the area, driving property values higher.
Their strategic positioning allowed them to not only benefit financially but also to be part of a landmark project that would shape Tokyo's skyline. The anticipation of what was to come, the potential of their investments, and their growing influence in the real estate market filled them with a profound sense of accomplishment and responsibility.
They were not just passive observers of change. They were active participants in the transformation of Tokyo's urban landscape.
Spring had just begun to nudge away the chill of Tokyo's winter when Takumi and Hiroshi sat down in their office, the room bathed in the soft light of a new dawn. It was here in this space, humming with the potential of their past successes, that they prepared to embark on their boldest venture yet, an all-in investment into a burgeoning tech company known for its innovative approach to digital currency mining. Are we really ready to do this? Hiroshi asked, tapping a pen against the thick file of research on the desk.
Inside were charts, projections, and a patent application for a technology that promised to revolutionize Bitcoin mining by significantly reducing energy costs.
Yes, we are, Takumi assured him, his voice steady with the conviction of one who had seen the future.
I remember reading about their breakthrough in 2021. This patent, they're going to get it, and it's going to change everything.
Bitcoin, as you know, becomes huge, but the energy consumption becomes a major criticism.
This technology addresses that.
It's the future, Hiroshi. Hiroshi nodded, the weight of the decision clear in his expression. It's a huge amount of money, Takumi.
Putting nearly everything we've earned into this, it's the very definition of all-in.
Takumi leaned forward, his eyes locked on Hiroshi's.
It is. But think about it. Not only do we stand to make an enormous return, we help pioneer a solution that's more environmentally friendly for Bitcoin mining.
We're betting on a more sustainable future for the tech.
Convinced by Takumi's unwavering confidence and their history of successful predictions, Hiroshi agreed.
All right, let's set up the meetings. If we're doing this, we'll need to negotiate our investment terms very carefully. Over the next few days, they met with the tech company's executives, a team of brilliant engineers led by a visionary CEO who shared Takumi and Hiroshi's enthusiasm for innovation and sustainability. Discussions were intense, filled with technical jargon and financial forecasts, but also with a palpable excitement about what this technology could achieve.
With your backing, we can accelerate our development and bring this technology to market much faster, the CEO explained during one of the meetings, her eyes alight with passion for the project. We're prepared to support you fully, Hiroshi responded, shaking her hand firmly. We believe in this technology, Ted and your team.
Contracts were drawn up, funds were transferred, and Takumi and Hiroshi found themselves at the helm of what could be one of the most significant advancements in cryptocurrency technology. They monitored the progress closely, visiting the research and development labs, attending updates, and learning more about the intricacies of Bitcoin mining. As the patent was officially secured later that year, the impact was immediate. The tech company's value skyrocketed, and with it, the investments of Takumi and Hiroshi. They watched in awe as their bold decision paid off, not just in financial terms, but also in contributing to a shift towards more sustainable practices in a high-energy consuming industry.
Sitting in their office one evening, a celebratory bottle of sake between them, Hiroshi raised his glass.
To the future, may it always be as bright as today. Takumi smiled, the city lights twinkling outside their window, a mirror to the stars above.
To the future shaped by our hands.
Their all-in investment not only transformed their fortunes, but also solidified their reputation as forward-thinking investors who dared to believe in the power of innovation and the certainty of Takumi's unique insights. It was a gamble that had reshaped their lives and promised to influence the trajectory of technology and sustainability for years to come. As the Tokyo skyline basked in the golden hues of an autumn sunset, Takumi Nakamura and Hiroshi Sato found themselves stepping out of a sleek black limousine. The flash of cameras greeted them as they arrived at one of the city's most anticipated charity galas, an event graced by celebrities, business moguls, and media personalities. The buzz around their latest successful ventures had catapulted them into a realm of societal elites, a stark contrast to their modest beginnings. Inside the opulent ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast sparkling light over guests draped in designer finery, while orchestral music swelled in a perfect crescendo. Takumi and Hiroshi mingled champagne flutes in hand, exchanging pleasantries with faces they had only seen on magazine covers before.
With every handshake and nod, their confidence grew, but so did their awareness of the many eyes watching and evaluating their every move.
Can you believe this, Hiroshi?
Takumi whispered, leaning in as they paused by a towering arrangement of exotic flowers. A year ago, we were planning out our investments in a tiny office, and now here we are.
Hiroshi smiled, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. It's surreal, Takumi. But we earned our place here.
Just remember, every conversation could be a potential deal or a potential risk.
We're playing in a bigger game now. Their conversations often veered towards their sudden rise in wealth and influence. Investors queried about their next moves, while philanthropists sought their interest in various projects. Takumi, ever the visionary, spoke with a keen intellect and charm that drew people to him. Hiroshi, with his cautious demeanor, kept a watchful eye on the interactions, mindful of potential missteps. As the evening wore on, the pair navigated through clusters of guests, their senses attuned to the undercurrents of flattery and subtle inquiries into their success. It was a dance of words and wits, played out beneath the soft glow of ambient lights and the subtle fragrance of orchids. Later, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Hiroshi turned to Takumi, his expression contemplative.
This world, these parties, it's all exhilarating, but it's also a lot of scrutiny.
We need to be careful about how we present ourselves and who we trust. Takumi nodded, his eyes reflecting the myriad lights that flickered across the cityscape. I know.
Success has its perks, but the height at which we stand now is a precarious one.
Let's enjoy the view, but never forget the foundation on which we build our dreams. Their laughter mingled with the distant sounds of the gala as they returned inside, ready to face the crowd once more.
With each step, they solidified their status as pioneers of their age, yet behind their smiles lay a cautious vigilance, aware that each handshake could be a new alliance or a new challenge.
The glamour of success was intoxicating, yet it was laced with the responsibility of maintaining their integrity and foresight in a world eager to see whether they would soar higher or stumble. The gala was in full swing, the air rich, with the melodies of a live jazz band and the murmur of elite conversations. As Takumi navigated through the throng of elegantly dressed guests, his gaze fell upon a figure that made his heart skip a beat, Kenji, his former business partner. The man who had once stood by his side, only to betray him when greed overcame loyalty.
Kenji looked much the same as he had years ago, though his hair was just a touch grayer, his smile a bit more practiced. He was laughing heartily with a group of well-dressed entrepreneurs, a glass of expensive scotch in hand. As Takumi approached, a flicker of recognition and surprise crossed Kenji's face. "Takumi."
"It's been too long, my friend,"
Kenji exclaimed, stepping forward with outstretched arms, the picture of warmth. The casual observer would never suspect the undercurrents of tension.
Takumi managed a polite smile, accepting the gesture with a brief non-committal embrace.
"Kenji, it's good to see you thriving. What brings you here tonight?" he inquired, keeping his tone light, though his stomach churned with a mix of anger and caution. "Oh, you know me, always looking for the next big thing. I've started a new venture in the tech field, revolutionary stuff. We should talk about maybe working together again, huh?"
"Just like old times," Kenji proposed, clapping Takumi on the shoulder with feigned camaraderie. Takumi felt the old wound of betrayal twinge at the suggestion.
"Perhaps," he replied noncommittally.
"Tell me more about this new venture of yours." As Kenji launched into an enthusiastic spiel about his latest project, which indeed sounded lucrative on the surface, Takumi listened intently, not just to the words, but to the unspoken intentions behind them. His mind raced, evaluating not only the potential truth in Kenji's words, but also the risks of allowing him back into his professional circle, even peripherally. Hiroshi, noticing the interaction, drifted over to join them, casting Takumi a questioning glance. Takumi excused himself for a moment and pulled Hiroshi aside. "That's Kenji," Takumi murmured, keeping his voice low.
"He was my partner in my previous company, the one who embezzled funds and nearly ruined me." Hiroshi's eyes narrowed as he glanced back at Kenji, who was watching them with a curious look.
"And he doesn't know you're aware of what's coming."
"That you know how things ended between you two?"
"No, he doesn't. And I intend to keep it that way for now. We need to be careful, Hiroshi."
"He's charming and convincing, dangerous traits in a man without scruples," Takumi explained, a hint of steel in his voice.
Returning to Kenji, Takumi continued to play the part of the intrigued former colleague. Inside, however, he was already devising a plan to investigate Kenji's current activities more thoroughly.
The evening continued with Takumi and Hiroshi maintaining a facade of polite interest, while behind their smiles lay a resolve to uncover the truth behind Kenji's charming veneer. As they left the gala later that evening, the cool night air felt like a cleansing breath. "We'll look into Kenji's business first thing tomorrow," Hiroshi said decisively. "We can't afford to take his word at face value, not after everything you told me." Takumi nodded, his gaze firm and resolute against the backdrop of the city lights. "Yes, we will." If Kenji thinks he can walk back into my life without consequences, he's sorely mistaken.
We'll be ready for him this time. As the last notes of the jazz band faded into the background and the gala attendees began to trickle out into the Tokyo night, Hiroshi found himself walking alongside Takumi, who seemed unusually quiet, the usual light in his eyes dimmed. "Takumi, you've been off since you spoke with Kenji tonight," Hiroshi finally said, his voice low and concerned as they stepped out of the bustling gala hall into the quieter, dimly lit street outside. Takumi let out a deep breath, the cool night air visible in puffs of white.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't expecting to run into him like that. It brought back a lot of unpleasant memories.
Hiroshi paused, his expression serious as he turned to face Takumi. "I could see that. You've mentioned him before, but you never went into much detail. What exactly happened between you two?"
Takumi hesitated, then leaned against the cold metal railing of the nearby bridge, looking out of the water that shimmered with reflections of city lights. Kenji was more than just a business partner. He was a friend, or at least I thought he was.
"We built the company together from scratch.
But while I was focusing on the tech, he was embezzling funds. It wasn't until we were on the brink of a major breakthrough that I discovered the extent of his betrayal."
"He nearly ruined me, Hiroshi." The pain in Takumi's voice was palpable, and Hiroshi placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
"I'm sorry you had to go through that, Takumi. It's clear it still weighs on you. What he did was unforgivable."
Takumi nodded, a bitter smile touching his lips. "It was a hard lesson."
Trust once broken is not easily mended. Seeing him tonight, so unrepentant and scheming, it's like he's just waiting for another opportunity to strike.
"Then we won't give him one," Hiroshi said firmly, meeting Takumi's gaze with a steely resolve.
We use this as an opportunity. We keep an eye on him, find out what he's really up to with this new venture of his. If he thinks he can waltz back into your life without consequences, he's mistaken.
We'll be prepared this time, protect ourselves, and maybe even get some advance warning if he's planning anything that could affect the market or our interests." Takumi looked at Hiroshi, gratitude mingling with the remnants of his earlier distress. "Thank you, Hiroshi.
I knew I could count on you. Having you here, it makes dealing with the past bearable." Hiroshi smiled, clapping Takumi on the back as they started walking again.
That's what partners are for, right? Let's get some rest tonight.
Tomorrow we start digging into Kenji's affairs. We'll be discreet, use our connections, gather intel. No direct confrontations until we know exactly what we're dealing with.
As they made their way through the quiet streets, the weight of the evening's revelations hung between them, yet a plan of action was forming, a path to navigate through the echoes of Takumi's past betrayal. Hiroshi's loyalty and strategic thinking were the anchors Takumi needed, reminding him that this time he wasn't facing his past alone. In the quiet privacy of their office the following morning, Takumi and Hiroshi huddled over a large desk strewn with various dossiers and digital devices. The early sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting long shadows that seemed to underline the gravity of their undertaking. "I've reached out to a few contacts who might know more about Kenji's operations," Hiroshi murmured, tapping away on his laptop.
We should hear something by the end of the day.
Takumi, who had been pacing restlessly, stopped and leaned over Hiroshi's shoulder to look at the screen.
Good. I've been thinking all night about the implications of what we're doing. If we dig up dirt on Kenji, are we really any better than him?
Using what I know from the future, it feels like we're meddling with fate. Hiroshi glanced up at him, his expression thoughtful.
It's a fair concern, Takumi, but remember, you're not using your knowledge for personal gain this time.
You're trying to prevent harm.
That's a significant moral difference.
We have the means to stop him from possibly destroying more lives.
It's a responsibility, not just an advantage.
A notification pinged and Hiroshi opened a new email, scanning the contents quickly. Here's something from Mika. She's a financial analyst who's had some dealings with Kenji recently.
She's willing to meet and share what she knows. Set it up, Takumi said, nodding decisively.
Let's find out everything we can.
Later that day, Takumi and Hiroshi sat in a secluded corner of a quiet cafe, waiting for Mika. When she arrived, her demeanor was cautious, her eyes darting around before she sat down.
"Thank you for meeting with us," Mika Hiroshi began, offering a reassuring smile. "We're concerned about Kenji's recent business activities and any potential fallout they could have on the industry and his associates." Mika took a deep breath before speaking, her voice low. "Kenji's been involved in some risky business deals bordering on illegal. He's been manipulating stock values and laundering money through offshore accounts."
I have documents that show some of this activity, nothing directly traceable to him yet, but it's only a matter of time.
Takumi exchanged a worried glance with Hiroshi.
Do you think he knows how close he is to being caught?
"He's arrogant," Mika replied, shaking her head. "Thinks he's untouchable."
But people are getting suspicious, and it's starting to affect more than just the people directly involved with him.
Hiroshi leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Mika, would you be willing to share those documents with us?"
We need to understand the full scope of what he's doing.
"I can do that, but be careful," Mika cautioned. "Kenji's not someone you want as an enemy." After Mika left, Hiroshi turned to Takumi. "What do you think?" Takumi sighed, rubbing his temples. "I think we have no choice but to act."
Kenji's not just a thorn from my past anymore. He's a real danger to others.
We use what we learned to quietly set up barriers against his schemes.
We'll need to be subtle, though, to avoid direct confrontation. Agreed, Hiroshi said, pulling out his phone to start organizing their next steps.
"We'll gather more evidence and then decide how to proceed." "We have to be smart about this, Takumi."
It's not just about stopping Kenji. It's about protecting everyone involved, including ourselves. As they left the cafe, the weight of their decision pressed heavily on them, yet there was a resolve in their steps.
They were not just businessmen. They were guardians of their community's integrity.
Their path forward was fraught with challenges, but they were determined to navigate it with caution and care.
Weeks of careful preparation and discreet inquiries had led to this moment. Takumi and Hiroshi arrived at the high-profile tech conference with a sense of purpose, their briefcases heavier with the burden of evidence they had quietly amassed against Kenji. The conference buzzed with the energy of innovation and networking, but for Tommy, the noise faded into the background as he prepared for the private meeting with Kenji. The confrontation was set in a small, austere meeting room within the conference hall, stark contrast to the vibrant displays and enthusiastic discussions outside. Kenji arrived, his confident stride unaltered by the gravity of the meeting he was walking into.
Kenji, thank you for meeting me here, Takumi began, his voice calm but firm as he closed the door behind them. Kenji smirked, taking a seat across from Takumi.
"I'm always happy to talk business, Takumi."
"What's so important that it couldn't wait?" Takumi placed a folder on the table, his hand steady despite the turmoil brewing within.
"It's about your current ventures, Kenji."
"I've come across some concerning information. Information that suggests you may be involved in activities that are unethical, potentially illegal." Kenji's smirk faded slightly, his eyes narrowing.
"Is that so?"
"And where did you get this information?" "Sounds like rumors to me."
Takumi opened the folder, spreading out several documents and photos that detailed Kenji's financial maneuvers and questionable partnerships. "These aren't rumors, Kenji.
These are facts."
Transactions traced back to shell companies, money funneled into personal accounts, manipulated stock prices.
"I'm giving you a chance to explain, maybe to correct course before this goes any further." For a moment, Kenji's facade cracked, his face contorting into a mask of anger before he regained composure. He leaned forward, his voice low and menacing.
"You think you can threaten me with this? Do you know how many people in this industry bend the rules? I'm just playing the game, Takumi. I'm not threatening you, Kenji.
I'm trying to help you.
We were friends once." "I don't want to see you destroy yourself or others around you," Takumi said earnestly, though he kept a careful watch on Kenji's reactions. Kenji laughed, a harsh sound that echoed slightly in the small room. "Help me."
You want to help yourself?
"You think you can take the moral high ground? Come here and play the hero?" "What are you going to do, Takumi? Expose me?"
You have no idea the kind of power I wield now.
Takumi's resolve hardened. "I don't want to expose you, Kenji." But I can't allow your actions to harm others. This is bigger than just us. You have a chance here to make things right. Don't force my hand.
Standing abruptly, Kenji slammed his hands on the table, leaning in so close, Takumi could feel the fury radiating off him.
You'll regret this, Takumi. You and your little sidekick, Hiroshi. You think you can corner me? I'll bury you both before I let that happen. As Kenji stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Takumi remained seated, feeling the weight of the confrontation settle around him like a heavy cloak. He knew that despite his attempts at reconciliation, he had just ignited a war. After a few moments of contemplation, Takumi gathered the documents and left the room to find Hiroshi, who was waiting nearby, anxiety etched across his face. It didn't go well, Takumi said simply as he approached Hiroshi.
Hiroshi's brow furrowed with concern. What's our next move?
We prepare for the storm, Takumi replied, his voice tinged with determination. Kenji won't go down without a fight.
We need to be ready for whatever comes next.
Making a stand? In the aftermath of the confrontation with Kenji, Takumi and Hiroshi regrouped in a quiet corner of the conference center. Hiroshi's features were taut with concern, reflecting the gravity of the situation as he listened intently to Takumi's recounting of the threats.
We can't let Kenji's threats go unchecked, Takumi declared, his voice low but resolute. He's desperate and that makes him dangerous. I agree, Hiroshi replied, pulling out his phone to jot down some notes.
We need to act swiftly and carefully. We should alert the authorities and tip off the financial regulators.
If we can push them to expedite their investigation into Kenji's activities, it might slow him down or even stop him.
Exactly, Takumi nodded.
And we need to reach out to some key figures in the industry. If we consolidate support against Kenji, he'll find himself isolated.
It's time we use our network to protect not just ourselves but everyone else he could harm. The next few days were a blur of activity. Takumi and Hiroshi met with influential figures within the tech and finance sectors, sharing their concerns under the guise of seeking advice. Their approach was subtle, hinting at potential market disruptions due to unethical practices by unnamed industry players. This indirect strategy sparked interest and concern without directly implicating Kenji, thereby avoiding direct retaliation. At the same time, they compiled all the evidence they had gathered into a comprehensive dossier and anonymously submitted it to the Financial Services Agency.
They requested a thorough investigation into irregularities linked to Kenji's company, emphasizing the urgency of the situation.
However, Kenji's response to their maneuvers was more vicious than they had anticipated. One evening, as they were leaving a late meeting to strategize their next moves, they were ambushed by several men in a poorly lit section of the parking garage. It was clear from the outset that these weren't mere thugs. They were professionals likely hired by Kenji.
Takumi, look out! Hiroshi shouted, spotting the first attacker lunging towards them with a crowbar. Reacting swiftly, Takumi dodged and countered with a forceful push, sending the attacker stumbling back. However, more men appeared, surrounding them quickly.
In the chaos, one of the attackers managed to land a heavy blow on Hiroshi, who grunted in pain and fell to the ground. Takumi called out, his heart racing as he fought to reach his friend.
He managed to fend off another attack, but knew they were outnumbered and outmatched.
Just as the situation seemed dire, the sound of sirens pierced the air, and the attackers suddenly retreated, disappearing into the shadows of the garage as quickly as they had appeared.
Paramedics and police flooded into the area moments later, attending to Hiroshi, who was dazed but alive.
Later, in the safety of a hospital room, Hiroshi, bandaged but in good spirits, met Takumi's apologetic gaze with a wry smile.
Well, that was closer than I'd like, he joked weakly.
Takumi, however, was not in a joking mood. I'm sorry, Hiroshi. I never thought he'd go this far.
We're dealing with someone who has no boundaries.
It's not your fault, Takumi.
We knew what we were getting into, Hiroshi reassured him, then his expression hardened.
We can't back down now. This only shows how desperate Kenji is to keep his secrets.
We're close to exposing him and he knows it. You're right, Takumi nodded, his resolve hardening.
We'll make our stand no matter what. Kenji started this fight, but we're gonna finish it. In the quiet sanctuary of Hiroshi's hospital room, where soft beeps of monitors punctuated the silence, Takumi and Hiroshi found a moment to reflect on the turbulent events that had unfolded.
They sat beside a large window, watching the gentle fall of rain against the pane, a visual respite from the chaos that had become their daily reality. Hiroshi, looking more recovered yet still marked by the ordeal, broke the silence first. You know, Takumi, this entire journey, it's been about more than just fixing our past mistakes or securing our future.
Takumi nodded slowly, his gaze introspective.
It's strange. When I first realized I could change things, I thought about all the personal gains, the wrongs I could right for myself. But now it feels like every step we take sends ripples through everything around us. We've started something that's altering more than just our own paths.
The butterfly effect, Hiroshi murmured. We tweak one small thing, hoping it'll fix a problem, not fully understanding how far the ripples might travel.
Yes, and those ripples have brought us here, to confrontations and conflicts we never anticipated. It makes me wonder if we're really in control or just along for the ride with everyone else, Takumi added, his voice tinged with humility.
Hiroshi turned to face him, his expression solemn. Maybe it's a bit of both, Takumi.
We make our choices, but we have to accept that the outcomes are often out of our hands.
That's why we have to be wise about the powers we wield. Takumi sighed, his thoughts drifting to their recent encounters with danger.
Kenji's reaction, the violence, wasn't something I ever wanted to provoke.
I wanted to protect us, our future, not endanger us further. It's not your fault, Takumi. People like Kenji, they choose their paths. You can't blame yourself for their decisions, Hiroshi reassured him, placing a hand on his shoulder.
What matters is how we respond, how we handle the aftermath.
They both knew that the challenges they faced were far from over. There were likely to be more obstacles, more repercussions from the waves they'd created. But in that quiet room, the two friends found a shared resolve.
We'll continue, but with greater caution, Takumi decided, his resolve firming. And with a focus not just on what we gain, but on what we contribute.
If we're changing the timeline, let's make sure it's for the better for everyone.
Hiroshi nodded in agreement, his spirit undeterred by the hardships.
And we'll do it together like we always have.
From here on, let's ensure our actions are as responsible as they are bold.
We have a unique opportunity to make a difference, Takumi. Let's not waste it. In the expansive glass-walled conference room overlooking Tokyo's bustling skyline, Takumi and Hiroshi watched the city light up as dusk settled. Their company had expanded rapidly, now occupying several floors of a high-rise in the heart of the financial district.
As they reviewed the latest market reports, a sense of unease grew between them. Have you noticed this trend in the tech sector?
Takumi pointed at the graph on his tablet, showing a series of unexpected spikes in startup valuations. These fluctuations seem random, but they've been more frequent since we dealt with Kenji.
Hiroshi leaned over to examine the data, his brow furrowed. Yes, and look at this one, he said, switching the screen to show the stock performance of a small biotech firm that had tripled its value in just a few months. They were barely on anyone's radar, and now they're leading the market in innovation.
The room was quiet save for the soft hum of the city outside. Takumi sighed, setting his tablet down.
Do you think we caused this? Our moves against Kenji weren't just a stone thrown into a pond, they were a boulder.
Hiroshi nodded slowly, the implications of their actions weighing on him.
It's possible. We disrupted Kenji's network, sure, but maybe we also disrupted the equilibrium of the entire market. Startups that would have stayed in the shadows are now in the spotlight, possibly due to the vacuum we created.
It's like a butterfly effect, Takumi mused aloud, the term echoing in the spacious room. Small changes we made having large unforeseen consequences.
We aimed to correct one wrong, and now we may have shifted the course of the entire industry.
Hiroshi stood and walked over to the window, gazing out at the city. The market's nature is to adapt, to find a way through chaos. Maybe we're just seeing it recalibrate itself. But we need to be sure. We can't have unintended consequences undermining our original goals. Takumi joined him at the window, watching the streams of headlights below. We need more information. We should conduct a thorough analysis of these startups and their trajectories.
If our actions have propelled them, we need to understand how and why. Agreed. Hiroshi turned from the window, his expression resolute.
Let's start with that biotech firm. If they're the new frontrunners because of our actions, we need to ensure they're playing by the rules and not filling a space left by Kenji's kind. Takumi nodded, picking up his tablet again. I'll arrange meetings with our analysts first thing tomorrow.
We'll map out all significant market changes post-Kenji and see how they correlate with our interventions.
As they prepared to leave the office, Hiroshi paused at the door. Takumi, whatever we find, we'll handle it. We've steered through rough waters before. This is just another wave, not a typhoon. In the calm of their meticulously organized office, Takumi and Hiroshi sat across from each other, each poring over the details of various tech startups that had recently made significant market gains. One company in particular caught their attention, a once small startup that had just announced a breakthrough in virtual reality technology, specifically a virtual sandbox for earthquake simulations. This could change everything, Takumi said, his eyes fixed on the glowing screen, displaying the startup's portfolio.
Imagine the potential for disaster preparedness. This tech could save lives, especially with something like the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in mind.
Hiroshi leaned in, intrigued.
A virtual sandbox that simulates earthquakes. That's impressive. And you think this surge in their popularity is tied to the market shifts we've been seeing? Takumi nodded, scrolling through more data.
It seems likely.
They were a blip on the radar before, but now they're leading the tech wave.
I think our actions might have indirectly given them this spotlight. As they discussed, Takumi dialed up the CEO of the virtual sandbox company, arranging a meeting under the guise of potential investment discussions.
Later that week, they sat down in a sleek, modern conference room across from the CEO, a young and enthusiastic entrepreneur named Aiko. Mr. Nakamura, Mr. Sato, it's an honor to meet you, Aiko began, her voice vibrant with passion for her project.
Our virtual sandbox is designed to help cities plan and react to earthquake scenarios in real time, using VR to simulate various intensities and impacts. Takumi, genuinely interested, leaned forward. Your technology is fascinating, Aiko. We believe it could be pivotal for disaster readiness. Tell us, how did your company manage to advance so quickly in recent months? Aiko smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes.
Well, we received an influx of interest and capital that allowed us to push our R&D much faster than anticipated.
It was quite unexpected, but certainly welcome. Hiroshi exchanged a glance with Takumi, both aware of the implications.
It sounds like you're managing the growth well, Hiroshi said, probing gently. With such powerful technology, there are significant responsibilities. How are you preparing to handle the ethical and safety standards?
We take that very seriously, Aiko assured them.
We're in talks with regulatory bodies to ensure our simulations are accurate and beneficial without causing undue panic or misinformation.
As the meeting progressed, Takumi's thoughts were divided between the potential humanitarian benefits of the technology and the unintended consequences their previous actions had set in motion. Aiko, we're considering investing in your company.
We see a lot of potentials not just for profit but for societal benefit. However, we want to be sure that your company's growth and impact are sustainable.
Aiko nodded, understanding the depth of Takumi's statement.
We aim to be transparent with our investors and the public.
Your support and guidance would be invaluable. Leaving the meeting, Takumi felt a mixture of hope and caution. Investing in Aiko's company could be a way to steer some of the changes we've caused towards something positive, he reflected to Hiroshi as they walked back to their office.
Yes, it's an opportunity to correct course and ensure that our influence does more good than harm, Hiroshi agreed, his tone optimistic yet measured. As they pondered their next steps, the weight of their decisions was palpable, but so was their resolve to turn the ripple effects of their past actions into waves of positive change.
Back in the subdued lighting of their private office, Takumi and Hiroshi delved deeper into the financials and strategic plans of Aiko's virtual sandbox company. They were impressed by the detailed approach and the potential impact of the technology on public safety. After much deliberation, they decided to make a significant investment, one that would enable the startup to expand its reach and refine its technology further. "We're doing this then?"
Hiroshi asked, his hand hovering over the phone, ready to initiate the transfer.
"Yes," Takumi confirmed, his tone serious but filled with a sense of purpose. "Let's make the investment. But let's do it quietly. No publicity."
"We don't need our names attached. The focus should be on the technology and its benefits, not on us."
Hiroshi nodded, dialing their financial manager to arrange the transfer of $2 million to Eiko's company. As he spoke quietly, arranging the details, Takumi pondered their decision to remain anonymous benefactors. Once the call ended, Hiroshi turned back to Takumi. "It's done.
$2 million quietly invested."
They'll receive the funds by tomorrow."
Takumi sighed, a mixture of relief and anticipation stirring within him. "Good. I hope Eiko uses it to truly make a difference. This technology isn't just about innovation. It's about saving lives, preparing communities for disasters before they occur."
"I know," Hiroshi replied, his gaze thoughtful. "It's more important that it gets the recognition and adoption it deserves, especially from governmental agencies and emergency services. Public education on this could change the landscape of disaster response." The following week, Takumi and Hiroshi met with Eiko again, this time in a more informal setting, a quiet cafe that overlooked a serene park. The early morning sun cast a gentle light on the table as they discussed the future.
"We've made an investment in your company." Takumi began, watching Eiko's reaction closely. "It's anonymous because we believe the focus should be entirely on the work you're doing."
Eiko's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and gratitude evident. "That was you? Thank you, both of you."
"This means we can push forward much faster and more safely. We can start pilot programs in cities prone to earthquakes, work with local governments." "That's exactly what we were hoping for," Hiroshi interjected, his voice warm. "We also suggest you start public workshops, maybe even partner with schools to educate children on earthquake safety. It's the everyday people who will benefit the most from your work." Eiko nodded enthusiastically, her mind already racing with ideas. "I will.
"And I'll make sure our developments are transparent and focused on public safety."
Your investment won't just fund technology, it will fund a mission."
As they parted ways, Takumi felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing they had steered their influence toward a noble cause. "Sometimes the best moves we make are the ones nobody knows we made," he remarked to Hiroshi as they walked back to their office.
"Exactly," Hiroshi agreed, a smile touching his lips. "Let the results speak for themselves."